fueled for and extend. Use the code Clydesdale to get 20% off at checkout at c4energy.com. On Clydesdale Media, where we bring you the widest array of content here on our YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notifier so you're first to know when new episodes are available. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Clydesdale Media Roundtable. It's a podcast. Clydesdale Media Podcast. Yeah, the holidays are coming. Mine's not working completely, but we're going to have some fun today because we have with us the 35 to 39-year-old champion of Legends, Megan Markee. Megan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. We kind of talked off air a little bit. You're the third person we've interviewed thus far, and your story is just different than the other two we've talked about. The other two kind of accidentally fell into CrossFit, and it just was something that they were kind of naturally good at and worked at to get better. You've been around the sport for a little while. You've been doing the open for a while. You've done teams. You've done a lot of things. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie in a second, but my first question to you is, when you signed up for Legends, like, what was the goal?
Yeah, my goal was kind of to check out the Masters division. I'm newer to the Masters division. This is technically my second year because of where the age cutoffs for the games. I technically was Masters as a 34-year-old. And so I'm newer, and I kind of wanted to see what it was. Is the programming different? What are the people like? Where do I hang with this group versus the group I'm used to? And so I think just kind of exploring that was really my goal.
What did you discover?
Well, it seems like I can hang, which is great. I don't know. I'm still going to have to keep exploring. Is the programming like we saw that weekend? Is that how Masters is, or is that this one weekend, that we had with Bob? So I'm still trying to sift through that. I did do a couple of the quarterfinals and in Masters and some of those workouts to try to figure out, is it less skill or is it not? Why do we do so many more lunges and benching? Is that a pattern, or is that just something that happened to happen in a couple years? So I'm kind of just still wrapping my mind around, the whole division.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jamie.
So the audience knows you were in the 35-39 for the open season this past year, and made it to quarterfinals. And this past year, they only took the top 30 to semifinals, and you were 39th.
Yeah. And that's even better than honestly I thought I was going to do. I've had a whirlwind of things in my personal life in the last year, all positive, but all bringing me away from CrossFit and training. And so that was also kind of an exploratory, like, where do I fall? Really no expectations to move past quarterfinals, but where I placed, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can keep doing this, maybe it's not over for me. But, doing the math too, still kind of evaluating, like, for how few people they take, does it make sense for me to keep doing, a standard individual route? Does it make sense to do team? What's my best avenue forward in the sport? Where do my skills fit best? So that was still kind of exploratory. So honestly, that placement I was still pretty happy with, and would have been in no place to move on to further, games or, semifinals events anyway.
Did you do all the semifinals workouts to see where you would have been?
I did some of them. I didn't get them all done.
Okay.
But I did, I certainly paid attention to them. I definitely saw the skill go up. I saw some of the weights people were putting up. And so, it's, I think it's going to look a lot different this year with how many more people they're taking in. So we're going to have to kind of reevaluate, which way I want to go.
Absolutely. I mean, that has to make you excited knowing now it's 25% move on, and then 40 get to make it to the game. So like you would have been in. So right. You have a real shot this year. But also we get to not pay two. It's the same weekend. We get to do the individual quarterfinals. So you have both options right out the gate.
Yeah. Right. Which is super exciting for someone like me that still doesn't really know where I belong. And I get to, I think it's going to be all the same workouts, right? If I read that right. So that means everyone in the gym gets to do it together, versus having to like squeeze in, everybody else who's younger does the workouts with me to help me out, and I do their workouts, so I'll help them out. And we're all just tired at the end of the week, that month. So I think that's going to be a fun change. We'll see if that sticks, but it'll be fun to do this year.
I'm excited.
Is one of the things you discovered doing Legends that online competition may not be your best self, that in-person competition is actually better for you?
I don't think it's that. I think that online competitions give you less workouts. And I think the suspicions I always have, I think were proven to be true over Legends, which is that the more workouts you give me, the better I'm going to do. I think a 3-day comp is better than a 2-day comp for me. And I think an online qualifier with like 3 to 5 workouts isn't going to be as good for me when everyone can do it multiple times, take their sweet time to do it. I think I have stamina to last a whole weekend. And I think that, I do have some holes that I really need to work on. And the more workouts you give me, the more I can overcome those. So if you look at the Legends weekend, right, we started with swimming, not a forte of mine. I was super exposed, which is good for me. And I take with open arms. And then we had a lift, not a strength of mine either. And especially hasn't been a priority for me in the last couple of years. It's something I have to work really hard at to stay strong. And if I neglect it for a little bit, it shows quickly. So, we started the day, I started in 18th, I think. And I was like, top half, like it's not too bad. That's kind of I was like, well, considering there were 2 weaknesses, and then I slowly clawed my way back up, which is just my story in CrossFit through the years. And so I think I was just given the time in Legends to show that and to come back. And so I think it's more of that than online, because, previously in the open, I've placed pretty well. And it's kind of been, I maybe make the team because of my open scores, but then, when we go into later competition, I'm not strong enough and I'm kind of the weak link. And so, I've helped teams get there and then not been super helpful on the other end of it. So online qualifiers usually are okay for me. I finished 5th in Legends, having not repeated any of the workouts. I did them in a few days. So, I don't think it's that. I think that I learned that long weekends are good for me, and I learned how important scoring is for the choices you make on the floor. Right? I think a lot of athletes didn't pay attention to the scoring style that was chosen. That really benefited somebody placing 1st through 6th. Versus middle of the pack throughout the weekend, right? So when you had a 2-part workout, it was much better to place 1st and last than it was to place 10th and 10th because of how the scoring worked out. And so I think, especially, getting to that last day, I think, I wonder if, some other athletes had realized that if they would have made different choices in those last workouts.
So that was a lot to unpack. I'm gonna turn to Jamie for a second, because I see similarities in that. Where did what Megan say about having more workouts, is that better for you? Did that resonate with you, Jamie, as well?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah. I've always preferred more workouts, and I don't like the online format where people do a workout 3 times. And you don't get that luxury in a comp. You hit the floor, you do it, mistakes happen. Like the rope climb workout for me, things happen, things don't go perfect, and you don't get to redo it and put in a better score. I was the same as you in the online qualifier. I just did them one time through and was confident enough that I'd make it there, even if I'm not sitting in top 5 to make it there. It doesn't really matter. Like, I just need to get there, right? I don't want to stress over online qualifiers. But yeah, more for me has always been better. I would say we've been a very similar type athlete. Like, I know the audience doesn't know this, but I've known Megan now since we were at Granite Games together, and Megan actually went with, I've talked about Selena on here plenty of times. Megan was on a team with Selena, and that's where we met. And so I've followed Megan's story for years. And I think we're a pretty similar athlete. Like you said, you were 20th in the strength at Legends. And I said this on the other podcast, only one person to one of the 65-year-olds, only one person outside of that won the strength, won their division. So like, I will say, I think Legends was well-rounded enough programming that what didn't need to just be the strongest athlete. Like they really had some CrossFit stuff in there, and that paid out in the end, not just being the strongest. So that was great for both of us, for sure.
Yeah. And, I think that I've always been good at pushing my 80, 90% in Metcons, which is not something you're supposed to be able to do, right? Which shows that my maxes should be higher, but, is also a trainable skill, right? To be able to hold 80% through a Metcon. I mean, I won the heaviest workout Metcon, right, that there was with the 155 squat cleans, but had one of the lowest lift scores. So, I think that's just something that I prioritize and find as an athlete and as a person more important, that I can push heavy weights for a lot of reps over having a strong max, but you pay for that too.
So shout out to Not a Taxidermy Deer, who gave us $1.99. I agree, Jamie, one and done. That brings me to a question I have for both of you, because Jamie and I have talked about this on our show, that there seems to be a trend of getting heavier through that a more importance is put on getting heavier. What is you've been around the sport a while. What are your impressions of that? And how do you see that working out as you move into masters, or maybe not?
Getting heavier, like your body weight, or the workouts getting heavier?
I would almost say both.
Both. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was moving that way very quickly. If you look at something like the 2015 regionals, where like not a lot of women could overhead or could snatch 155, but they had overhead squats on the floor. Remember that workout? And it started to almost spiral out of control, in my opinion. I didn't think they were testing the fittest people anymore. I think they were just testing the strongest people. I feel like there's been a step back in the last handful of years to even that out a little bit more, which I think, at least for me, I've looked at the programming the last couple of years and been like, well, maybe this is interesting again for me, because I felt like with my size, I was getting phased out a little bit. And I feel like I'm in the game again with some of the new changes they've made. I think, we've always seen you're a little bit limited in that, semifinals or regionals, stage by the facility they're in. But once you get to the games, I mean, they are testing agility. They're testing so many things that I think they're struggling to test in earlier stages. So I think they want to test it. I think they're not always hitting the mark in something like the Open. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope the trend continues to be more well-rounded and less big size, but I'm optimistic about it personally. If you asked me 3 years ago, I'm not sure I would have said the same thing, but I like where it's going. And I'm crossing my fingers that bigger isn't always better. I've certainly been all shapes and sizes. I've learned how to control my body over the years, and, I've been about 15 pounds heavier than I am now. Shooting for an individual, sanctional at the time. And I've been about 15 pounds less than I am now, which at my body weight, I sit somewhere around 125. That's a huge difference. And so I felt how CrossFit is at all those body weights. And it certainly does make a difference to be bigger, especially when you bring in something like machines. But as long as you have enough workouts, period, and enough workouts that are different, and not just power workouts. I think you should be able to, I should still be training power, right? I should still be lifting heavy just because I'm small. So as long as you make me do all the things, I still think I can, claw my way out of those and do some damage control.
What are your thoughts of Legends not having a machine?
Yeah, I don't want to speculate, but, with games happening in the future, I imagine there was some difficulty with sponsorships and, getting machines in. If I was just to speculate, I could see how that would be challenging to, to have conflicting sponsors, having to, start to use some of the game's sponsors and having that conflict with another brand or something. So I wonder if that's not part of it. I think I would have liked to see more monostructural components, period, but I don't think it has to be a machine. And I think to test power, you don't need a machine. We have our legs. We could have run, right? It was beautiful in Arizona. I think that was, definitely could have happened. I think, not seeing events over like 10 or 15 minutes was For me, kind of a bummer, just because I'm really proud of, the varied time domains that I train in. But, events get to choose whatever they want to test you, and you show up, and, if it was a challenge in its own right to do 8-minute workouts basically throughout the whole weekend. That felt like Fran. Like, can you sprint until you're almost throwing up twice a day for 4 days? Like, that was a test in itself. No one's ever asked me to do that before. So, it's every comp is different, and you have to be able to hang for whatever they ask you, right? We could have shown up and it could have been a heavy workout for every single workout, and that was still the comp. They didn't tell us before we got there really what we were doing, which I love. That's like old school CrossFit, right? Like our old competitions, you didn't know what the workouts were. You showed up and they were saying, they'd say, do this. And I love that.
I agree. No practice, no gaming. Yep.
Right.
You mentioned that you've been on teams a lot. Do you prefer one over the other, teams or individual?
I think historically teams workouts have been a lot more sprinty, and that's not my favorite. I have a background in field sports. I have a pretty big aerobic base, and so I like being able to go my own pace, and I like longer workouts. But there's something about suffering with a team and training with a team that just you can't replicate by yourself. So I like both for their own reasons. I think that something I learned actually from going to Granite Games with this team that I had never met before. The way we formed this team is just everybody who was in 50th place in the qualifier just came together and joined the team. We emailed each other. We said, wouldn't this be cool? And to the credit of Granite Games, I think we were all pretty much on the same level in that time of year, like at that exact date. And I don't think I've ever had more fun on a team. Prior to that, I maybe have been shooting for individual, didn't make it. So I pushed together this team of people who weren't ready and I was peaking, or the opposite, right? I claw my way into a team that I really shouldn't be on, and I'm the weak link, and it's not fun on that end either. So I think that when I experienced everyone being like the same fitness level, the same pace, everyone having a hole and covering each other, like we had a team that meshed, I think I started to realize how it could be really fun. I just maybe haven't had the right, the right people to make it work. And of course it gets so hard when it's, only affiliates too, when there was that rule, and we kind of go back and forth about if that's a rule every year, but it just gets hard with scheduling. 6-people teams was a nightmare to schedule, right? So 4-person team is a great change. I would love to see 3-person same-sex teams be part of the games, or have that be a permanent change at the games. If I were to vote, that's what I would do. I think for flow, it would be easier. You already have all the women's equipment set up. Now you run a team, right? But I guess to answer your question, which do I prefer? I don't know. It depends on the year. You have to ask me every year.
You seem to truly be a go with the flow. Like whatever the competition gives me, whatever that year kind of pans out to be, I'm ready to go with whatever's asked of me.
Yeah, I think that's a learned skill. I was not always like that. I was young. I yelled at my judges. I said workouts were dumb because I wasn't good at them. Right. I've had the bad attitude. I've done it. And then I think a couple things happen. You get more confident in your abilities. I know I can snatch if there's a little kid running around in front of me at the gym. 5 years ago, I needed to have the exact same plate brand on either side. Everything had to be perfect because I was so bad at snatching that like nothing could be wrong with my situation. Right. Now I'm more confident in my ability. And so it's like, I don't need to be so worried about that. I trust myself. And, I got older, right? And I think that's what I loved about Legends is that everyone was over that hump, right? Of feeling privileged and having everything, handed to them. Not that everyone did, right? But I'm just saying, I think when you're, maybe 20, right? You just don't see the whole picture. And I think everybody was kind of over that. And so there was a lot of like really good attitudes. Everyone was having fun, whether they lost or they won, or maybe a piece of equipment didn't, work perfectly or whatever. So, now I'm, part owner in a gym, right? We run comps. I get how hard it is. I'm not going to complain about it, but it's learned. It's definitely learned, right? I mean, you still always see the guy at the gym that needs the music on or he can't exercise, right? It's like you grow out of that, I think.
Alexis de Troyes jumps into the comment and says, my OCD makes it where I need same plates on each side.
Well, we're all different, right?
Yeah.
I think COVID shook us all a little bit too. It's like, you might not have the same plates on both sides. You're lucky to have some plates today, and I mean, on top of that, I just love working out. I just, I hear people that, I got burnt out and then I had to do this. I had to take a break. I've never felt that. I don't get it. I don't relate to it. I've always loved exercise. Sometimes I just don't want to cycle a barbell for a while. I'm okay. I use a dumbbell or I go play soccer or I do something else. I go for a hike. It's just, I've never felt like I have to do anything and I'm forcing myself. And there's so many ways to exercise that I don't know. I don't get that, I guess.
I used to be a same plate on each side guy.
Yeah.
And then the gym I moved to had like weights set up in. So when COVID came, we had lanes and every lane had everything you needed in your lane. And there you just took what you got, right? But at least you were able to work out. And I think like it made you appreciate that at least I get to do this, right? And it doesn't have to be perfect anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you surround yourself with the right people who call you out on that stuff. Like, get over yourself, put the plate on,
Right.
And if you have your like, your things that make you lift better and you want to, you need the same plates. Like, no, I'm not judging that, Alexis, but, I just think, when I've had a bad attitude, I've almost always had someone there who trains with me being like, did you just yell at that guy? Like, go back over there. Absolutely not. This is not who you're going to be. No. And, and so I think that's important too. And, being in a gym for me has done that. I know a lot of people work out in their home gym and stuff, and that's fine too. But for me, I've gotten so much value out of being around people who hold me accountable for things like that.
Before we dive into the competition specific stuff, I do want to dive into a little bit of your personal life, because Lex brings up again, love that you have the balance and you work and have a family and own a gym. Talk about like having to go with the flow. You were on an adoption journey recently. You thought one thing was coming, you get another thing. Like life throws things at you and you have to like adapt in the moment. Can you walk us through what that was like to think you're getting a girl or a boy and you get a girl?
Yeah. Well, it even starts before that, actually. So my family and I decided to foster a baby probably a year and a half ago now. And of course, like when someone hands you a baby, I wanted that baby. I wanted that baby to be my baby. And about 6 weeks later, they found another home for that baby. And then flash forward maybe 2 months, they placed us with another baby. This one had high medical needs. And that baby stayed with us for about 7 months. And then about 3 months after that, we did have a birth mother contact us about adopting their baby. So we have had 3 infants within the span of 1 year. So I thought I knew what sleep deprivation is, but when it lasts a year, I do not think I ever had any concept. When it comes to competition, I always thought I'm going to go individual, regular division until my joints tell me you need to be in the master's division. And then I fostered 2 children and adopted a baby. And I instantly felt like 30 years older in my whole body. And I was like, oh my gosh, I understand now why they created this division. Like the person that I am coming to a competition as is not the same person physically as 1 year ago. I mean, I think there will be both long-term and short-term, effects of, having a baby at all. And I didn't even birth the baby. So I can only imagine, if somebody's done that. So we were placed with this child for adoption. We were in the hospital for her birth. Ultrasound said it was a boy. And then they said, oh, it's a very pretty girl. Right when she came out, we were like, okay, we have a girl now. I don't know. It's been fun. Our foster kids were both boys. So it's been fun to, feel like this is a brand new journey a little bit. But yeah, I mean, going with the flow has been the last whole year, not just this baby, right? It's been, this baby might be mine forever. It's not. This baby might be mine forever. It's not. This baby might be a boy. It's a girl. I mean, these are huge life changes. So I think that's probably been part of the lessons learned too. Hopefully they apply elsewhere.
Corey Leonard says kids are absolutely game changers.
They are. You hear it, and then when it happens, it's like, oh, okay, I understand what they were describing now. Yeah, this is different.
So I think it's safe to say that Legends is the biggest win you've had in your career. And you do that in the same year that you have all this personal stuff happening in a really cool way. And I saw, like, you made a couple posts about like how happy you were that your girls were there to support you, right? Like, so what did all of that mean in that process?
Yeah, I think one thing that I learned is that I think the more you let go of some things, all of a sudden it's like successes just come at you, right? It's like, I think there's like a power in caring less a little bit, right? Like, I think, I came into that competition thinking, yeah, we'll just kind of try my hardest every workout, right? There were some people in other lanes that were like, oh, that was so fun going back and forth with you in that workout. I mean, I kind of was like, didn't want to hurt their feelings, but I was kind of like, I had no, were we? I just went as hard as I could, and I had tunnel vision, and I had a good time, and I didn't know we were like fighting for first there or whatever. I just like was doing my thing. I don't think that's how I approached things before this competition. I think I just was like, oh, I'll try to beat that one girl, or, everything was so calculated. And I wonder if that maybe wasn't a blessing for me a little bit. And then, having my girls there, I mean, I think that you're lying to yourself if you think that you only do this just for yourself, right? Like, I think outside acknowledgement is like, we have to admit it's so important to us. Like, if my gym and my members are proud of me or like think it's so cool that, I do the programming for them and I just won that, like, that means a lot to me. And I can't pretend that it's just like me feeling good about myself and I do this to prove this to myself. It's to prove it to other people too. I think, I want my family to think it's really cool and to see me work hard and see me, fight up from a low placement and not give up. And it was really special.
You say you didn't notice the people beside you. Did you notice your family in front of you at the end of the lane?
I wish I could say I did, but when I say tunnel vision, it was severe. Especially in that lunge workout, man, I don't even know if I knew my name after that one. But I did look for them after. I looked for them after, and they were just, it's cute to see a little baby recognize you. Yeah, it's really cute. She got excited and clapped. And
so that's something I've never asked Jamie. Like, do you notice your family at the end of the lane? Your friends?
I hear Ronica very clearly, but she's loud. I rarely hear Aaron. He can be hard to hear, and he's not at everything. And there's times where I'm like, I like kind of like black out and just like, it's like womp womp, like you're like literally like going too hard that you can't quite. But yeah, I see them during certain things, especially in workouts that like in jump, I like was watching them. I knew what I was looking at in jump, but that like, it depends on the workout. It depends on how hard I'm hurting, or when I'm struggling, it's hard. When I'm doing good, I feel like I can look for them.
I think it's the moment before and the moment after, right? You look up, you see they're there, and you're like, oh, I got it. They're watching. Gotta go hard, right?
Yeah, during jump, I think Ronica punched me at least 37 times, especially when you were doing the heavy double unders.
Well,
what is she doing? What is she doing?
Got a little flustered there in that set.
Yeah, that was a disaster.
Things happen.
All right. So I want to touch on one more thing before we get to the event, and that is when I look at your Instagram, there are as many fishing pictures as there are CrossFit pictures.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Fishing and fitness are closely tied for me. Closely tied.
What does fishing mean to you, and what does it do for you?
Yeah, two things. One, I had a friend at one point tell me that I was miserable to be around unless I, one, exercised, and two, spent at least an hour outside every week. And she basically gave me the advice of you need to allocate this time for yourself every week. So just being outside, I think being by myself and being outside. So those are probably the two things, right? Like being outside in nature. I grew up in Minnesota, which is close to Canada. I heard that you're a Canada bias show, so I feel like that's pretty close.
We don't think that, our listeners.
I don't deny it.
Yeah, I grew up always being outside, right? And so I think it kind of, it makes me feel like a little kid again and just kind of calms me down and gets me some sun, right? And then it gives me my alone time too, which I think is just important for everyone, no matter how you do it, right? And it's especially more challenging as you have children to make sure you cut out that time for yourself. So I think it does those two things for me. Plus, fly fishing is really good for people who have no chill. And I am one of those people. So it's nice. It's not like a bobber and you sit there. You're always changing, always moving, always doing something new, paying attention to stuff. So it's good activity for me.
What is your greatest fishing achievement?
Oh, okay. There is this event called the Flyathlon. You should look it up. It is a hybrid of a running race and a fishing race. And they're like different distances you can choose, right? So if there's like a half marathon, you run the half marathon trail, and then there's little beaver ponds along the whole route. And at some point in the race, you have to climb down to the beaver ponds, catch a fish, and then put your rod back up and run with your rod for the rest of the time. And depending on what breed of fish you catch, you get a certain amount of minutes off your time. And winning the Flyathlon was maybe my best fishing achievement. It was perfect. It like brought all my worlds together into one sport. It was a fundraiser for conservation, but man, that was probably the best day of my whole life as an adult too. It was super fun.
That's cool.
If you podiumed at the CrossFit Games as a masters athlete, which would rank higher, the Flyathlon or the Games?
I think the CrossFit Games is a much bigger event than running and fishing against about 10 other people in the woods. But it was a very fun moment for me.
That's awesome. All right. So now we'll go back to Legends. And I'm going to turn it over to Jamie a little bit and let her kind of walk through some of the events. She did them, you did them. So she has a better understanding as to what was happening there. And I'll let her kind of take this over.
Well, we talked about you started with the swimming, not necessarily your strong suit. That one was really hard. I don't know about for you, but like for me to like know at all. Like you talked about the other ones, like not necessarily knowing where someone's at. That one was really hard to see where people were at. So that's like, you just kind of get in the water and do your thing and figure out, is that how you felt?
Yeah. And as I was telling you before, I'm kind of a tunnel vision person anyway, so I'm not sure I even would have noticed. The only time you could really see if somebody was like right in front of you, right? And so at the very end, the last length, I did see a couple people like kind of coming up on me. And so I did my best to sprint. That was the only time I saw anyone. I don't think I caught either of them. So, whatever, at least I tried. There's nothing worse than just being like, outrun by somebody in the last couple seconds, right? So I had to do my best, but I think it was a little too late at that point.
Yeah. I liked the swim. Like, it was nice to do something other than just swim. I liked getting out of the pool. It was an interesting event. I think dumbbell speed played a part and transition speed played a part. But you obviously had to be comfortable in the water to do fairly well in that workout. Do you swim like for training?
When I was training individually and a little bit more intensely, I did swim once a week. I would say I got more comfortable in the water, but I still was never good at But being comfortable in the water is half the battle, right? I mean, at least knowing how fast you should go. But the rec center I go to, it's, they wouldn't allow a dumbbell in. You can't dive. That was kind of an interesting thing to have to do again. So I thought it was cool to show up and be like, well, I've never tried anything like this. This is kind of cool. I did one dumbbell workout in the pool. When they told us it was swimming, I went a few times just to kind of make sure, brush the dust off a little bit. And I did bring a dumbbell once. And so I kind of understood that you had to take a second before you dive in, right? That kind of thing. If you dive too far, you're all of a sudden haven't been breathing for that whole length, right? So it kind of has to be a short dive. So I had a couple, things up my sleeve, but I mean, it still just totally fell apart into some kind of a backstroke situation. But, I got through it, and I think I finished maybe 12th in that. And does that sound right? And that was pretty good for me, to be honest. I was like, I'll take that, no problem.
So not the belly flop style.
Not the belly flop, but I did bet one of the girls to do a cannonball, and she did execute in her last round, Kristen. So big shout out to Kristen for being the fun of the whole event.
That's awesome.
She didn't call it out though. I feel like you have to yell cannonball before you cannonball.
Yeah,
that was a little bit disappointing, but she still did it.
Oh, that's awesome. I must have been like cooling down, or I don't know, because I totally missed
she was in she wasn't in my heat, but she looked like left, right, and I think noticed that she wasn't going to do well in it and just cannonballed in on her last one.
That's fantastic.
That is something our listener Corey Leonard would do in a heartbeat. I know it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so then we go inside and we do the lifts. I know for me, like the warm up area wasn't like spectacular. There wasn't a whole lot of room. Yeah.
Federal law states you have to yell cannonball mid leap.
Exactly. I'll notify her.
Tough one to warm up for, that's always kind of been one of my things. Like, I don't even know if it's appropriate to program 1 reps at stuff like this when it isn't like an ideal situation to go out and do, especially for like those 60+-year-olds. Like, and so that's just always been like a thing of mine for these comps, but it is what it is. We went out there and did them. How were your lifts like for you? Like a PR that day or anything?
Definitely not a PR. No. I had messed with the list before I left. I knew I was on the weaker side for myself right now, which is already starting at kind of a low baseline. So, I think this is not an excuse for my lifts. I think I executed what I could do in that moment, but I did have COVID the week before Legends, and I was real on the fence about going, and I tested negative about 4 days prior and kind of rallied for maybe 2 like awful workouts right before I left. And I was like, let's just see. I'm just going to go and let's just see. So it kind of worked out perfectly that the swim, which is a weakness of mine, and the lift, which is a weakness of mine, was the first day, which is the only day I wasn't feeling awesome still. And then I felt fine the rest of the weekend. Like I woke up the next morning, I felt fine. I was like, well, this could have worked out better. So I don't think it really affected my performance, except that I hadn't worked out much. So I was getting way sorer than I should have. And I was really sore after that swim workout. Like my quads just from the dumbbell were kind of cramping up. I am not a power cleaner. I'm a squatter. I squat my deadlifts. I squat everything. And I went out there and power cleaned and jerked. And I was like, what is happening to my body? So it was kind of weird for me, but I ended up hitting probably ish what my maxes were. I'm sure I could have rallied for 5 more pounds, on either if I warmed up better. To your point, I think I warmed up maybe too early because I was afraid I wouldn't get the equipment. You see a bar that's like light and you're like, I better get it in now.
Yep.
So, so between that and my quads kind of being sore, I was like, this is what it's going to be right now. My lifetime maxes are probably only 10 pounds more than both of those lifts anyway. So what would 20 pounds more have really done in the grand scheme of things for some of the numbers those girls were putting up? So I probably placed where I should have placed, which was fairly low. I think that the advantage we had, both you and I had in this comp is that that was a 100 point score for 2 lifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Bob said, it's going to be a combined score 100 for pounds. But if he had made it 2 different scores, it just would have been 50 points anyway. So I'm not sure it would have changed the leaderboard really much. So that was a benefit for me. I got all the lifts out of the way, and it was only one score. So, but if you look into the next morning thinking that, all right, I got to call my babe back up, started first day in 18th place. Like, all right, let's see if the points are there. And then we start with that, the farmer's carry workout.
The double dumbbell. Yep.
I gave my whole entire soul to that workout, and it moved me from 18th to 17th place. So at that point, like, the discouragement was real. I was like, I don't know. That effort was not worth that jump. And that's when I started looking into the scoring and realizing, okay, I got 7th on that, but tried very hard to get that 7th place and just destroyed my grip for the whole weekend. But then I realized, well, if I had gotten 6th, right, the scoring jump was pretty big. So basically the top 6 were awarded a lot more. And then 7th down to, I think it was like 11th or something, or 7th down to 20th or something, was like the next tier down of points. And then basically the bottom half, it was only like a 1 point difference between scores. So that's when I realized, okay, I either have to like hold back on these or go for it 100%. But luckily what was left were all workouts I liked. So I basically just
Did you hold on to them unbroken?
I held on to them unbroken. There were some borderline reps that I almost can't believe they even counted because my forearms were like seizing to the point where I couldn't open them anymore. And I was like, I'm not sure if this is going to count as extending my arm as they were like cramping up. It got very close, but I did do it. But somehow 6 girls managed to do it faster than me. So how much more I could do in that one.
Yeah, grip after that one was, I couldn't even sign my scorecard. I had no pressure. Yeah.
I really put myself in a bad spot for the rest of the weekend after that. Do you think that Bob thought that we would all be doing that unbroken? Not all, but
no,
at least half.
Oh, I don't know if they thought half. I mean, I think that they maybe only thought top 5 or so especially like maybe in the 35, 39, maybe 10. But I don't even know. I don't even think that many did. Like,
no, I seemed like many, even the heats before me I watched and everyone was just holding on. I was like, well, that is not the way I thought this was going to go. I wonder if Bob thought it was going to go this way.
Maybe in the 35 to 39, but I think when you got to 40 and started moving up, I think only like the top 4 or 5 in the heats did. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was only the top heat, and it was only a couple people. There were a lot of people dropping in devil's press in the earlier heats.
I mean, I don't mind a devil's press. I wonder if maybe that wasn't the smartest choice for me to try to go unbroken on that for a 7th place finish, but hindsight's 2020. So,
well, did it impact you for the rope climbs?
Yeah.
You feel like? Yeah.
Yes. No, I placed well on that one, but I might have even maybe won it or got top 3 or something, but third. So I placed well, and rope climbs are not a strength of mine. I'm very short. I'm not usually very strong in the descent. It's something I've been practicing, but I always feel like people can somehow do it way faster than me. But yeah, it worked out for me. I'm very comfortable with any kind of rope, any length, any weight. We have drag ropes. We have beaded dubs in my gym. We do it all the time. So I was comfortable with that. And I think it got people a little more than I thought it would. So maybe it was like a little bit less about the rope climbs at the end of the day. But oh man, was I hurting. And the next day, I mean, it was like the whole weekend was a lot of grip.
Yeah. I agree.
A lot of squatting too.
It was a lot of
squatting, but a lot of light squatting. So, I feel like our quads were, hopefully trained for that. I don't know if I've ever trained for that.
40 squat cleans at 155 is not little
30, right?
or light. Was it 30?
It was 40.
10 to,
30 or 40.
10 to, I don't know, 240.
Yeah, I mean, I was just happy to do singles on something for once in the weekend instead of having to hold on,
Yeah.
cycling so much. But yeah, I mean, I thought to myself maybe neutral grip would feel better on the rope, but then it's like no, because we were neutral grip on the dumbbells, and it was kind of just relentless on the grip.
Yeah.
We got through it.
Yeah, that one was short enough that I feel like my grip didn't start screaming at me till I was done.
Yeah, I think it started to hurt really right when you finished. I agree. Yeah. Now I think the last workout, if you talk about legs, I don't think I've ever felt my legs seize like that mid workout and like not be able to jump over a bar and burpee over the bar. It was awesome. It was awesome because it was like debilitating with no, like it was still 100% safe, but still debilitating. Like it wasn't, you didn't put us in like a dangerous spot or anything like that. Right. But it was just funny, just legs giving out. I thought it was hilarious, but very painful.
Well, before we get to the final day, you get to Saturday, and that was your absolute best day. A second and a first. You get to do like some true CrossFit, the bar muscle ups, and cycling the barbell light. That was a good workout, but again, grippy.
Yeah, grippy again. I did not think I was gonna be able to hold on to that unbroken, which I didn't. But I saw Easy Muhammad do it before, and he did like maybe half of his workout with singles and still won that event. So I was like, okay, see, you can do it. I think, when at that point, the way all of our grip felt, I knew the bar muscle ups were going to get sketchy at the end, even though it's really not that high volume. I think it was like maybe 30, maybe not even, which I think for all the athletes that were there, like normally in a workout would be fine. But even for me, I was like slipping off the top in the last few reps. I think I had
so we lost Megan for a second. It's almost like her phone died.
Or she's getting a call.
Yeah, call usually doesn't take this long. But anyway, so when it's weird because like your grip must have recovered faster than most, because a lot of the athletes we've talked to in the last couple of days talk about how their grip went. And you didn't have that problem. Is it something that you train more, or do you think you figured out the recovery aspect of that?
That's a good question. I didn't even honestly. I mean, I have my gun and like a scraper, and I kind of like to scrape my forearms after stuff like that. But I heard a lot of people went and like put their arms in the ice bath, that kind of stuff. I didn't do any of that. I was more worried about. There she is.
Sorry about that. Computer glitch there.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, you cut out just as you were saying. You were slipping a little bit out on the top, but you were able to hang on and kind of get through the bar muscle ups.
Yeah. So I think where I did look left, right, which is always dangerous for me, and realized I probably had on the last round a moment, if I could have held on unbroken and then jumped right on the bar, I probably could have taken first. And I just knew I didn't trust my grip. And I was like, it's going to have to be second on this one. And I just slowed down to make sure I did it. Way rather have second than like it's 6 because I get no rep or something. So.
Yeah.
And then you move into the event that you win.
Yes. So that one, which one was that? That second
another one,
squat clean handstand walk.
Squat clean handstand walk. Yeah. So that was surprising considering I think somebody did like a 230 or 240 clean and jerk. So I was like, they're gonna touch and go with this. This is gonna make me look stupid. And I was surprised that the handstand walking kind of caught up to them a little bit. They still were all faster the bar than me, just not fast enough to make up for it, I think.
Mm-hmm. It was the great equalizer for sure. They just weren't fast enough, and they had to like stop and rest.
Yeah. And I think I'm pretty comfortable kicking right up So, I mean, I was okay being a little hypoxic and still handstand walking, but yeah, that bar was like a little nerve wracking for me, but I don't know, it worked out. That was a big surprise. I was psyched about that win.
Yeah, you crushed that one.
Then you go into the last day. Did you leaderboard watch to see like where you were, what you had to do at that moment? And I guess the other question is, at what point did you realize you had a shot at winning this?
I thought points wise, I didn't have a shot going into the last day. Basically, I looked at where Amanda Norton was at, and her point spread was pretty decent, not like locked in, but I looked at it and I was like, I don't know, for me to even get on stay on the podium, I would have to get I'd have to get top 6 for sure on both workouts, on both parts. And she'd have to get below 10th. And she's been consistently hanging around 6th for every workout. So I was like, I just don't see her. I mean, she looks great. She doesn't seem fatigued. That would be such a weird situation. And then sure enough, we go into that one. I get 4th and 5th, and she gets 10th and 12th. I was like, that is the exact thing that had to happen. And I didn't expect it. And I had, I don't know if this was based on where I was placed at the time, or if it was just random, but I ended up having the first lane, so facing away from everyone. So I had my back to everyone. I had no idea how I was doing. There were a couple friends that were, close to me in the crowd that would kind of be like, I don't know, I think you're doing okay. I think maybe, I don't know, I think you're probably still up there. No one could really tell, right? There were such short sets back and forth. So, based on what I knew the points, how I knew the points were allocated, I knew that it was much better to do really good and then maybe sacrifice one versus, right, just trying to get, 10th and 10th or something, right? I knew I had to get a top 6 score. So for me, I love burpees. I do empty barbell thrusters all the time, and that weight was pretty similar. So I was like, okay, I think I know how this is going to feel. I think I would rather go hard on that one. So in my mind, my plan was just be comfortable in the first part, save my, place myself okay, and then go for it on the second part because everyone else will be tired. And then the friend that I had sitting in the crowd, said, I think you should go for it, kind of halfway through that first part. She's like, I think you're placed okay. Keep going for it. Switch your plan, start going for this one. So I did that, and I was not okay going into the second workout. And I was actually surprised by my placement because that for me should have been, I wanted to be the only, one of the only ones that finished that part. I didn't finish it. Usually I'm a lot faster at burpees than everyone, and I had to step over the bar, which I've never done, I think maybe ever in my life. And it was borderline embarrassing, but then the placement ended up being okay. So I guess it worked out for me that I tried so hard on that first one.
So what does a win like this mean to you when you look at what you're capable of going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think you place well, especially when it's not an expectation, it's kind of lights the fire again, right? This is a brand new division for me. Maybe I have a future in this division, and where I thought I was getting left in the dust and maybe some of the other divisions, maybe this is a new start for me. It definitely, exposed me in the places I thought it would, it showed me what I would have to work on, but also kind of showed me I can hang with some of these, some of these ladies. So, I think as I've shifted my training in the last couple of years, I was I followed Invictus for many, many years, sometimes with a crew, sometimes by myself. And I've shifted to, a new model, trying to get all the competitive athletes to be doing the classes in our gym. So to program different levels such that, the highest level is, some kind of a semifinal athlete, really heavy, higher, maybe more reps, sometimes heavier. And then, a level 1 being a scaled and then everything in between, so that you can still be working out with your friends, but still be training for the games. We only have an hour at a time, right? So we put a couple extra sessions in there. So if you want to do a double day, or you want a second lift, or, drills or something, we've plugged that in. And so for me, this was a cool test that it is working. Doing this in the class setting and being part of a group and having fun with my friends. I'm like, worst case, it doesn't work. I'm still fit. I still look good. And I got to be with my friends and my business is doing well, right? So I'm like, what do I really have to lose trying this strategy? And I think it's, it's shown that it is, it is a style, that you can program, that if you want to be competitive and do classes in a gym and your programmer is up for putting in a little extra work, it's possible.
So
you write all the own programming?
Yeah. So a group of 3 of us do the programming for the whole gym. We each have our own biases, so we make sure we have a team calling ourselves out on it a little bit. And I think when it morphs a little bit, it's easier to do your own programming. Sometimes if you write something terrible, it's hard to do it because you know how it's going to feel, right? And so when you have a group of people, I think like fudging it a little bit and then a coach that's not me presenting it, it feels like a whole new workout, once you come to class.
That's cool.
So my question was, in this roller coaster year of emotions, you become a mom. How much doubt crept in with the sleep deprivation, with the new responsibilities, with all of that, and then to come to an event like this and win? Like, I can't imagine the ebb and flow that would be for an individual.
Yeah, that's a roller coaster. It was definitely a roller coaster. I think that when you try something new, like, like starting to do class instead of starting to do instead of doing, something with a little more personalization, or something meant for competitors, I think there was already like a little bit of doubt there. I think that there were people maybe in my gym questioning it a little bit too. Is this really working? Is this what we should be doing? And so, yeah, I mean, the doubt was there. I mean, I knew with how sleep deprived I was and how my body felt, it wouldn't be safe for me to lift as heavy or as frequently as I was before. And so that's always scary. It's scary, not just for a max, it's scary for, cycling a heavy bar. It's scary for doing something like a wall ball. Like if you're not squatting heavy, wall balls are pretty hard. They become hard, right? When, it's something like a heavy wall ball or something. So it's like everything is related, and so there, of course there was a good amount of doubt. But, I've done benchmark workouts just to make sure, I've invited people to my gym who I find to be a much higher caliber than me to see where I stand. And so I don't think that my times or my placements were anything surprising, but I shouldn't say I should say my times and my times weren't surprising. The way that I felt each workout wasn't surprising. I just wasn't sure where that would end me on the leaderboard. And so to see that, okay, this is exactly the time I thought I was going to get. This is the time I got in the gym. This feels like this other workout I did in the gym. I'm just going to game it the same way. And then to have that end me top on the leaderboard, I guess it's reassuring. It's definitely reassuring.
Well, this has been an awesome hour. It's been so much fun getting to know you. I'm so glad we're doing this series because the stories have been amazing and yours did not disappoint at all. We are definitely going to stay in touch throughout the season with all of these Masters athletes to kind of see where you guys end up in the next season. But I want to wish you good luck with everything, being a new mom. As a parent, I know what that entails. 2, about your season. I hope you have an amazing season this coming year.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the exposure too, that you're giving Masters athletes. I think it's my first interview, it's just so cool that, to have somebody, giving these women the attention that they deserve. I think it really shows gyms out there and, people over 35. You saw people over 50 doing handstand walking, doing bar muscle ups. We have to give Masters athletes more credit. We can do it. And you should ask us to do it. So thank you so much for bringing that all to light.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. I always feel like I'm with my people when I'm at the Masters events. And it's where I feel the most comfortable. So I'm 54 myself, or I will be 54 in a week. So yeah, I love the Masters, and we're going to continue to give them all the coverage. So with that, thank you everybody in the chat for participating. We love you all, and we'll catch everybody next time on the Clydesdale Media Podcast. Bye, guys.
So much.